My family and I go camping 3 or more times per year at various sorts of campgrounds throughout the United States. This time, we were in Indiana. I cannot recall the city because I was so little, but there was a Yogi Bear Jellystone campground. I adore this site and have returned more than 5 times in my life. Something bad happened on one of our first visits. Keep in mind that I was only a child at the time. I'd made some pals my age at the park. We did everything, including playing basketball, going to the arcade, swimming, and fishing. It was a lot of fun, and everything was going well. We were also staying there for a few weeks, so I had plenty of free time. On one particular evening, my friend Jake suggested that we go for a walk around the trails. Of course, I was curious. It was one of the few things this place has to offer that we hadn't tried yet. As we explored the paths, we realized it was far bigger than we had anticipated. So, shortly after, we decided it was time to return to the campsite. It was approaching dark, and the park's curfew is 9:30, so we had to return shortly. We waited for our parents to fall asleep for what seemed like eternity. Given the darkness, we decided it would be great to wander along the trails with our flashlights. I know that seems foolish. We were kids, so I'm sure you can understand why that would be entertaining for some wild teenagers. On the drive there, Billy was freaking out because we were breaking the rules, and he was a goody two-shoes. So, if he had given up and returned to camp, I wish we had all done the same, since my friend could still be alive today. So it was just me, Jake, and Carter. Carter was older than us, so he probably thought it was humorous. He went away and hid. He was simply attempting to intimidate us. We spent at least 10 minutes looking for him before he came out and terrified us. I was slightly upset, but we laughed it off. We'd been walking for perhaps 20 minutes by this point, paying little attention to where we were going. Jake and I were beginning to worry, hoping we weren't lost. Carter decided it would be interesting to keep falling with us, so he raced away and hid on us again. We became tired of hunting for him and yelled that we'd leave if he didn't come out. I felt awful about ditching, but I was tired of him fooling with us, and he knew it. So he turned around and began making her way back. After a few minutes of walking, I heard cries. It was Carter. We assumed he was still joking around with us, so we kept walking. A few moments later, I realized something dreadful was happening. He screamed at the top of his lungs. There's no way he was that insane or excellent at acting. We instantly hurried back to our parents. I mean, I've never run so quickly in my life. I informed my family about what was going on, and we all began seeking for him. My mother remained at the campsite and contacted the police. When park security got involved, the rangers gave my father a hard time and didn't take us seriously. One ranger was almost hounding my father the whole time. We could not find Carter. We had looked for nearly an hour and found nothing. There was no trace of him anywhere. Carter's parents were panicking and blaming my parents for everything. They eventually kicked my family out of the park, and we weren't allowed to return until the next year. They never discovered Carter. Even today, I blame myself for his disappearance. Every day, I am haunted by remorse over what I should have done differently. I used to enjoy camping, but a few years ago I experienced a traumatic event. I am not sure I will ever go camping again. So, this is my tale. We went camping one summer, as we always do. I grew up on this campground. Okay, not exactly, but I've been camping here with my family since I was a baby. In 2016, I was 14 years old. It was our first day camping this year. Everything was regular, except that I was a year older and had no pals with me. I am not an only child. I have a younger sister, but she is 7 years younger than me, so we don't have anything in common. I was sort of alone. I'd go to the park and get ice cream alone. My parents didn't always let me do anything I wanted, and I did spend time with them, yet I often felt alone. I used to spend a lot of time riding my bike around the campground because I was bored. The campground was quite spacious, but it wasn't your standard campground with motor homes, tents, fifth wheels, and so on lined up one after the other. There was plenty of space in between, packed with trails and a variety of trees. You understand? It was a wonderful campground. When I was riding my bike, I would frequently pass by a very eerie cabin. The cottage was quite a distance from both my campsite and any other campsite. It looked deserted, as if no one was camping there at the moment. One day, when cycling by, I saw that the front door was cracked open. I mean, I'd passed this cabin at least 50 times in the previous 4 to 5 days, and I was certain no one was camped there. Or so I thought. Geez, I wish I had never gone in there. Of course, my curiosity got the best of me, and I slowly walked up a few steps onto the porch and pushed the door forward. It was extremely strange since the door creaked the entire time, maybe for around 15 seconds. It sounded incredibly cringy. "Who's there?" I asked in perfect silence, eyes wide and jaw sank to the floor. The old man standing across from me told me to come inside and assured me everything was fine. I turned to go, but he yelled at me and told me to come back. I took off on my bike and drove as quickly as possible. Nothing truly happened after that. I'm not sure what he wanted, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out. I went home in a panic. I didn't inform my parents because I was too terrified. I'm not sure why, but the next day I drove past the cabin again. There was no trace of him. I realize now that he was obviously trying to entice me, and who knows what he was going to do. I hadn't seen him again until the final day of camp. I was at the arcade, playing a basketball game. He stepped up beside me and asked, "Hey kid, how come you didn't want to hang out?" I still recall this guy's face. He was quite tall, slender, and ancient, with long white hair and some worn out old clothes. His teeth were jacked up and yellow stained. He gave me the strangest smile and said I was a brilliant little one. He then winked at me before walking away. I never saw him again after that. We left the campground the next day, and I still have not told my parents. I'm not sure why. I just didn't believe I needed to. A man was clearly a predator, and he was attempting to prey on me. However, it did not work on me, and God forbid, it would not work on anyone else. Last year, me and a couple of buddies decided to go camping. We wanted to do something unusual for fun, and this is what we all agreed on. This was absolutely out of character for us, but it was just us boys, a few tents, and all the food we expected to need for the weekend. This wasn't your usual campground. It was in the midst of the woods, off some back roads in a small Tennessee town. We're more suburban kids, so it was a bit of a culture shock for us, but we were still enthusiastic. Shortly after we arrived and set up camp, We met some locals who informed us that this site was haunted and that unusual occurrences only happened at night. I'm not sure if it was about a beast or a strange old creepy man. I wasn't even paying attention because I thought it was ridiculous. We assumed they were just messing with us and joking about. Of course, I did not believe it. Seriously, are you kidding me? I'm not 12. We arrived late in the afternoon, so there wasn't much to do after setting up camp other than sit by the fire and drink some beer. Everyone was having a great time. We began telling each other spooky stories for fun and to enhance the camp mood, or vibe, if you will. We ate s'mores and hot dogs until we were extremely stuffed. After a few hours of being guys and being completely wasted, it was time for bed. We had to get up early tomorrow morning since we all intended to go fishing at a neighboring lake, which was only a short walk away. I couldn't sleep immediately after since I needed to pee so badly. I could not find my torch, so I gave up. I walked about 30 feet from camp and peed beside a tree. It was pitch black, and I mean as black as it gets, especially since the fire was almost completely out. I heard rustling in the bushes ahead of me. Oh, whatever, I thought. It's probably just a bunny or a deer, anything innocuous, even if it scared me at first. And that was only because it caught me off guard and you can't see anything. I could not see my own hand in front of my face. I returned to my tent, climbed into my sleeping bag, and tried not to wake anyone up. I tried but couldn't fall asleep. I was anxious, and I'm a light sleeper, so hearing everyone snore was driving me crazy. Within an hour, I began to doze off, but suddenly I awoke to the sound of rustling leaves. It was much louder this time, and whatever it was making a bizarre noise, almost like a wild beast. Yes, I used the word beast because I didn't know how else to characterize it. I quickly remembered what those locals had told us, and I was thinking, no, calm down. I'm just overreacting, I told myself. There's no such thing as monsters. Yeah, I was terrified, but my friend who was sleeping next to me also woke up in a panic. What the hell? Darren said. Dude, what is that? Is that a bear? I'm not sure, but what should we do? We both sat there for a moment, trying to figure out what the next step would be. We didn't want to run because if it was a bear and they started after us in the middle of the night, I don't think it would end well. I was there, thinking, well, it's probably best for us to just stay in here and wait it out. So that is what we did. We sat there quietly for perhaps an hour, whispering here and there. Darren fell back asleep shortly after, but I couldn't sleep since I knew something was out there. Call me a wuss, but I'm sure most of you would be freaked out as well. I lied awake for the majority of the night, simply thinking. I guess I drifted asleep again for a moment, and then I heard whatever that thing was doing again, this time messing around with some of our camp things. It was approximately dawn time now, so there was a little more light. I opened my tent and peered outside, and there were 3 black bears staring directly at me. Okay, it was a monster, but not the kind of creature the villagers warned me about. They started cautiously approaching me. I yelled to them, "Hey, get back. Go away. Guys, get up and help." Everyone got up slowly, but happily a few of my buddies awoke just as we were all yelling at them. It wasn't long before the bears went away. What would have occurred if I had been alone? I'm just grateful my buddies were present. We ended up staying another night at camp, and the bears did not return. That was probably a bit hazardous, but happily, no one was hurt.